Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Timeout with Tackle What's Next. I am your host, Danielle Berman. We are on episode 10 of Timeout with Tackle What's Next. Today is episode 10, and we're starting a little bit later than normal, but we have an awesome guest here joining you. One of my really good friends, Charma Harris, who's going to be here tonight. And just as a reminder, we are here Wednesdays at 6 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. on Instagram. We're talking to athletes, executives, about how they've used the lessons sport has taught them to create opportunities in life after the game. And tonight, as I said, we're talking to Charma Harris. Charma currently is working as an HR consultant, and she previously worked for the PGA Tour as a tournament services coordinator and a tournament services manager. And before that, Charma went to Syracuse University with yours truly, and she was a sprinter for the Syracuse Orange Track and Field team. She still is really involved with Syracuse University. She's actually a member of her major, the sport management department, and their advisory board. So I'm going to bring Charma on screen, and we're going to have a really awesome conversation. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and stand by. Charma will be here in a second. All right, Charma, are you here? Can you hear us?
Hi,
Hey, how's it
hi.
going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, it's good to see you.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. How's everything been going? How's life in quarantine been?
Life in quarantine is interesting but good. What about for you?
It's good. It's good. Lots of pivoting, lots of changes. And I'm
hmm
sure in your field, which is HR now, you guys have been changing a lot of things. So I know you've been consulting with a couple of different groups. And so
hmm
what's the hiring world look like right now with COVID?
Yeah, so I actually just kind of did a career pivot myself and am now with the consulting firm that you mentioned. But prior to that was in talent acquisition and was running some recruiting programs for two business units that were heavily recruiting during COVID. So they were actually the previous company that I worked for did research and analysis for federal clients. So we were recruiting folks who were going to be supporting COVID efforts and our COVID response efforts. So I was super busy. We had to transition everything from in person, and the company that I worked for really was big in kind of the traditional methods of recruiting, having people come in person and interview, and everything changed and went virtually. So doing interviews virtually, giving people all of their updates and all the pertinent information you need to make decisions about joining the company virtually. In addition to like convincing them, like, oh, our building is really nice, and these are the cool, like aspects of our culture that you're going to be a part of, without actually being able to provide that example for them in person. So it
Yeah.
was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun, but I think the biggest thing during COVID was it allowed me to see like the importance of like culture and how to respond to situations such as this pandemic. So it helped me shift my focus into consulting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for you, you were working at PGA Tour before that, and you were coordinating a lot of moving parts. So I feel like that's a really natural transition to like crazy COVID time. It's just a lot of different moving parts.
Yeah.
When you were working at the PGA Tour, how did you decide that you wanted to move out of sports and into more just traditional HR?
Yeah, I think for me, I saw like the importance of having the right people in the right place in organizations and the impact that it had on in sports world, right? So I was in event activation and planning. So the importance of having the right people on those teams, and how it played into the success of the event. And so for me, I primarily dealt with interns and volunteers, and at the PGA Tour, volunteers are a huge reason or a part of the success of executing tournaments, and just saw again the importance of talent management, even on a volunteer basis, like building the right talent, having those people in the right places, and how they can either play into a great culture or a bad culture.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that kind of sparked my interest and passion for just talent management, recruiting, and talent development.
Yeah. And let's go back even further. I know we went to
Okay.
Syracuse together. You were on the
Yes.
track and field team there. Can we talk about what inspired you, not just at Syracuse, but to get into sports? What did you love about sports? What was your first experience playing sports, and why did you stick with track?
Yeah, so I am super competitive. You know this about me, but the rest of the social media world does not, and at least my friends do. But super competitive, and I grew up in Houston, Texas. I was born there. I have three older sisters, a twin who's really not an older sister, but technically is. And we, as kids, had a very athletic family. So I remember in Texas going and like football, as we know, sports in Texas, everything's bigger in Texas. So football is one of those things. And so going to high visibility football games with large crowds that felt like a college environment, but was a high school game. I remember going to my cousin's track meets and my sister's volleyball and basketball games. And so always was around track. But probably or it's sports in general, but what probably got me into track was I, again, have three older sisters, and my father would make us run against each other. There's an 8-year age difference between the oldest child and my twin sister and I. And so we would like in the backyard compete against each other and race to like one side of the yard to the other. And I would always lose. And I think that's what like made me super competitive, and I hated losing. And then fast forward to, and that's probably at the ages of like 4 and 5. So fast forward to some years later, and my dad was an athlete himself. He played basketball and football and ended up playing basketball while he was in the military, and always believed that the foundation of any sport was track and being able to run and the mechanics of understanding how your body works. And so he put my twin sister and I into track as our first sport. And that's kind of how it happened. Actually, the competitiveness kicked in again because my first race I won and ended up making it to the finals at 8 years old from this specific 100, or I think it was a 60-meter track meet or race at that time. We weren't even old enough to do the 100 meters. And this person, or this little girl who was in the finals with me, said, she said, "You guys are going to eat my dust." And I was like, I'm not eating anybody's dust. I only eat food. I don't eat dust. And after that, it was like history after that. I never wanted to lose, and track was my new thing.
I love it. And I can also definitely see your dad being out in the backyard, being like, all right, you guys race over there. Like your dad would absolutely do that. So that is hilarious.
He
And
thought it was like this like strategic thing to get us into sports. It was like torture for me because I always lost, but now none of my sisters, I doubt they want to race me anytime
yeah,
soon.
I'm
But
sure they're all like, you know what, Charma's going to win. So,
yeah.
so, well, what impact do you think that running track or playing any of the sports that you play, because I know you played a few before you settled on track, what has that impacted in your life and who you are now?
Well, I'm competitive, so that's one. I'm competitive, and I believe in like bringing my best and doing my best in everything because I want to like whatever success looks like in what I'm doing, like I want to achieve that. So I think that's one big thing. I learned more about the team aspect of sports when I got to high school because it was more
Hmm.
so from an individual basis for me. So when I got to high school, just like the team environment, being a good team member, how everyone works together to achieve a collective goal. So I bring that to work. The relationships, like friendships and things, because you have to carry your weight of
Yeah.
the workload and do your part to make things successful. So I bring that mentality. And I think also my work ethic, like I have this like whole perspective. I think you and I've talked about this before about like, your life is like a season or your sport and training, and that, you've got to celebrate the little wins, you got to recover from the losses, but it's about the season versus like the game.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of approach life.
Yeah, I like that a lot because I think that's the struggle a lot of athletes do face is that when
Hmm.
their sports season literally is over, they're like, "Oh my God, what now?" And it's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that was just a game or like a
Hmm.
series of something in your life, and now the season continues, right? And it's the journey, the process, not the end result." And so
Yeah.
you obviously started out working in the PGA Tour in sports, pivoted to HR. So for athletes that might be graduating, student athletes might be graduating and thinking like, well, what do I do now? How do I decide what I want to do? How did you decide to pursue the career path you're on, and what was it like to pivot?
Yeah, it was pivoting was tough, I'll admit. I think um, I had, when I graduated college, I had this like awareness that like I'm still in sports, so I was okay. And then once I pivoted out of sports, that's when I had this moment like, oh wow, sports are like officially gone. So I think that was something that I wasn't prepared for, like how much of an impact it was going to have for me. And I would encourage students and individuals who are kind of doing that similar transition to really be aware, just have more awareness of and process what they feel, because it's real and it's hard to explain, but all athletes really have it if you've competed at some level, and then are transitioning. And then the other thing to help navigate what I was going to do next, I really paid attention to like what I loved most about sports. So I had the opportunity of serving as a team captain before, and I would like organize trainings and workouts, and really just knew that I wanted to be on a team and have some level of like involvement of organizing and like developing people. Because I think I also played basketball, so it was a point guard, and a part of being a point guard is, you know, figuring out the strengths of your team members so that they can score or whatever the case is. So like I knew I wanted a role that would allow me to in some ways be a point guard. And
Mhm.
so that's what I looked for whenever I was doing my pivot out of, or focusing on my pivot out of sports.
Yeah, I love that you thought about it as if it was your sport. You
Or
didn't
yeah,
take yourself out of that box, because I think that is stressful to do, to be like, oh my God, I only know things about sports and I've only experienced things through sports. But sports is really a metaphor for life. The reason people
yes,
use sports metaphors is because it applies everywhere, right?
yes,
Like teamwork, all these things that you're saying, like understanding your teammates, being the point guard, shooting your shot, like you
yep,
use these metaphors because they apply. And so don't try and force yourself into being like, well, now I have to think like a career person.
yes, I,
You can
yeah,
still think about what you like about your sport and translate that over. So speaking of
exactly.
that, what did you do successfully to set yourself up for what's next, besides thinking about it from a sports perspective? Like, what things did you do? Were you networking? Like, what leg up did you give yourself, if anything, or what do you wish you would have done when you were kind of transitioning out of being an athlete and into being a professional?
And I'm sorry, my phone cut out for a little bit. So I think you said, what do I wish I would have done as I prepared for the transition?
Yeah, or like something you know that you did that you thought was really helpful, that
Okay.
give advice to others to do.
I think what I would say is ask questions. I think in the humbling part about sports is that you spend so much time, especially once you get to certain levels, of being an expert in what you do, and like you're skilled, you know what you need to do, and you know a lot about, you know, your position or your sport, the ins and outs and what it takes to be successful. I think the humbling part is that when you transition, and also the scary part is when you transition, there's like this unknown, right? And I think what I embraced was it's okay to know what you know and know what you don't know. And like from that understanding, I asked questions, and I probably got on people's nerves because I asked a ton of questions, but like really wanted to figure out like my place, and knew that like what they were telling me might not necessarily be what I was going to do, but it did help me figure out, okay, like, okay, well, I share that experience, or like that's what I could see myself doing. So asking questions. So at one point, I remember before I even got to the PGA Tour, I remember wanting to be an agent or like a corporate sports attorney. And I had this professor who like discouraged me from doing it, but like asking questions like to figure out if it was going to be aligned with my strengths and what I was interested in. And I saved a lot of money by not going to law school because it wasn't for me, but like asking questions to make sure I was on the right track, and I would be able to get myself to the right track as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's so important. And also, like, understanding, I think you're a great example of like, there is no linear path to like what's next. And even if you think you have a plan, like, you just be flexible and don't be afraid to branch outside of sports or leave something that you think is your destined path. And
Yep.
the whole expert thing is so true. I mean, you want to go from expert level to expert level, but you got to go back down to the bottom and work your way back up. And, nobody's expecting you to jump into a career and be like, the, MVP of that career.
Yeah.
They expect you to have a learning curve, and it's now up to you to like give yourself that opportunity to like learn from that. So thanks for sharing that. I think a lot of people could take a lot of takeaways from that, just knowing
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, like there's no such thing as a linear path.
I'd also add that like it's something that you have to continue to work on. I do it now. I just started a new job, so I have to remind myself like you don't know that, and it's okay. And I have to have conversations with other people for them to reassure me like they really don't expect you to know that right away, and not trying to feel like you got the team on your back. I hate to put another analogy out there, but like putting the team on your back or being like a superhero, like it's okay to not be that person at that moment. And you can grow into it. I'm not saying that's not anything you should strive for, but it's okay to not always be that person.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And my last question before we wrap up is really, what advice do you give not only student athletes, but anyone that's looking for opportunities or trying to get a job, find a job? What's kind of one piece of advice you would give from your HR hat, for them to keep in mind as they're applying,
Yeah.
especially in digital world now?
Yeah, I was actually helping someone the other day with a resume, but really focus on one, your network, and then two, your resume. Just given the state of the economy and everything that's going on, unfortunately, a lot of people are looking for jobs. So you really want to ensure that you are advertising or promoting the right aspects of it. So do your research, make sure like your resume or whatever you are applying for your resume matches up with whatever you're applying for. And that you're really pulling out those key traits or skill sets or experiences that are pertinent for that job that you're looking for. The other thing is don't be afraid of like, again, switching industries. We just talked about it, but you may not, and you also said this too, you don't start always where you finish. And so like, it's okay to like, if you were in sports and you got to go into another industry for a second, just because of the nature of what's going on now in the world or in the job market, and you switch and then eventually get back into sports and be comfortable in that, embrace that, but making sure that you are wherever you see yourself going, you are doing something that's going to get you or catapult you or align you with what you want to do in the future. So you don't have to have everything figured out, but just always have like some little strategy or something that's going to help you tie back your experience to what you want to do in the future.
Yeah, that's great advice, especially now. Like you said, I think there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that just don't have opportunities in their industry that they're trying to get. And it's okay to just take that job that is, a good fit, but maybe not exactly where you want to be, and work there and get your experience built up and transition back. So thank you for sharing that. Thanks for putting your recruiter hat on and
Thank you. I can take that one off now. Back to consulting.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, well, now I know you have the new job. I know obviously you've been working in the HR field for a while. So, what's coming up for you? What is your goal kind of for the rest of the year in terms of obviously new job, but like what is there any other pivots we should expect coming from you or anything you've been working on the side that you've got going?
No, not at the moment. I am embracing, I think one of the things, again, talk about this earlier. You mentioned this, but like the uncertainty, like embracing not being able to plan. I'm a planner, so
Yes.
no one has been able to plan this year, right? And so like just embracing like what's going on to the degree that I can, and like be okay with like what I thought I was going to do for October or the Thanksgiving or whatever is not going to happen. And I've enjoyed that piece of not planning. So I'm excited to do that the rest of the year because I don't usually do that.
Yeah.
And I think also what I'm focusing on is just little things that I can do since I have that time to grow professionally. So I've been listening to lots of like podcasts and doing all these free trainings and listening to different, sessions that you have. So super excited to continue to do that because I don't usually have the time. So it's been fun, like getting the time to connect,
Yeah.
with folks and get and learn and gain knowledge.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's been a lot of pressure I think people have been under is like, oh my God, I have to come out of this with like 2 books and like
Yeah.
a podcast that I've launched. And it's like, there's so much up in the air right now. Like it's totally
Yeah,
fine to be like, we'll see what tomorrow brings. Like we'll see
exactly.
what's going on. So I love that. Thanks for letting us know what you've been doing to kind of, keep busy, but also, like you said, stay flexible with everything going on. So
Yeah.
in the vein of connecting and networking, and how can people, if they're interested in learning more about what you're doing and your path to you, how can they connect with you? Is it on here? Is it,
Yeah.
Twitter, wherever? Let us know how they can find you.
Yeah, connect with me on here. So I'm very fortunate that not a lot of people have the name Charma. So at Charma_H on Instagram. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. So Charma Harris, if you search that, it should be one of maybe a handful of people that show up. And my picture looks like this. So yeah, Instagram or LinkedIn are probably the best forms of communication for me.
Awesome. Well, Charma, thanks so much for being on Time Out with Tackle What's Next. You are our 10th guest. So 10th.
Awesome. I feel like that's like a good number. Thank you.
Yes. Thank
Thanks
you
for
for
having
being
me.
here. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no problem. And again, make sure you connect with Charma if you're interested in learning more. Thanks for all your support, Charma, of Tackle What's Next, and for tuning in to all our stuff as much as you can. And this is our last episode for a little while. We're taking a quick break, and then we're going to be back at the end of the month. So thanks to everyone who's taken a time out with us thus far. And we'll see you guys later in September. Thanks again, Charma.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work you're doing, Danielle. This is awesome.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.